The house was quiet, but his mind was louder than ever. Night after night, he sat in his worn armchair, staring at the old photograph resting on the table beside him. It was of his daughter, no older than 10, smiling with a missing tooth, her hair tied in a crooked braid he had clumsily made. He hadn't seen her smile like that in years. Time had pulled them apart, but it wasn't time that carried the blame, it was him. He remembered the day she walked out of his life, the disappointment in her young eyes when promises went work, pride, stubbornness, and choices that seemed so important at the time had slowly chipped away at their bond. He thought there would always be another chance to fix things, another day to apologize, but days turned to years, and silence grew thicker between them until it felt unbreakable. Now, in his late 50s, he felt the weight of regret pressing harder with each passing season. The walls of his home echoed with absence, not just of his daughter, but of who he once was. He told himself it was too late. She had her own life now, and he was nothing more than a shadow of the father she once knew. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that perhaps redemption was still possible, that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to make things right. It was his oldest friend, Michael, who refused to let him drown in silence. Michael had seen the decline, the way regret had worn him down like a storm wears down a cliff. One evening, over coffee, Michael said what the man had been too afraid to voice. "You can change the years you lost, but you can choose what you do with the time left." The words cut deep, because they were true. That night, he lay awake, turning the thought over and over. Could he face her? Could he endure the anger and the rejection he knew were waiting? The fear of being shut out forever nearly paralyzed him, but the fear of never trying felt even heavier. He realized that doing nothing would be the final mistake, the one that would haunt him until the end. As dawn broke through the window, he picked up a pen and a blank piece of paper. His hand trembled, not from age, but from the weight of what he wanted to say. Words of apology, words of truth, words he should have spoken years ago. They all pressed against his chest, waiting to be set free. For the first time in years, he chose action over silence. The letter was short, but every word carried the weight of years. He mailed it with trembling hands, unsure if it would ever be read, or if it would be torn apart before her eyes even touched the first line. Days passed with silence, each one heavier than the last. Then, one afternoon, an email arrived. It was from her, short, distant, but enough. She agreed to meet, though her words carried no warmth, only a sense of formality. He knew this was not forgiveness. It was a door barely cracked open. The cafe where they agreed to meet was crowded, but for him, the air felt thin, as if every breath had to fight its way through his chest. He spotted her instantly, older now, grown into a woman with strength in her posture and guardedness in her eyes. Yet for him, she was still the little girl with the crooked braid, though she looked at him as if he were a stranger. He walked toward her, heart pounding. She didn't smile. She didn't stand to greet him. She simply sat with her hands folded, her expression unreadable. He sat across from her, suddenly unsure of how to begin. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and unsteady. He told her he was sorry. He told her he had failed her, not once, but countless times, and that the years of silence had been his own punishment. Her eyes filled with tears, but they did not fall. She shook her head, her voice sharp and steady as she asked him why. Why he chose work over family, why he let pride win every battle, why he never fought for her when she needed him most. Each word was a knife, and he felt every cut, but he did not defend himself. He did not try to explain away his choices. For the first time, he simply listened, carrying the full weight of her pain. When her words finally faltered, there was only silence again. He wished he could reach across the table and close the distance between them, but he knew that trust was not rebuilt with a single apology. It was something earned slowly, like dawn breaking after a long night. She stood to leave, her chair scraping against the floor. He thought it was over, that she would walk out of his life once more. But before she left, she turned and said softly, "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet, but I came today because part of me wants to believe you can change." And with that, she walked away, leaving him with both pain and hope, the two fragile pieces of redemption. The days after their meeting felt like walking on thin ice. Every step mattered. Every choice carried the weight of proving who he had become, not who he had been. He began small, respecting her boundaries, sending short messages that expected nothing in return, reminding her that he was there. Sometimes she replied with a single word. Sometimes she didn't reply at all. Yet, he held on to those moments as if they were seeds, believing that, with patience, they could grow into something stronger. Michael, his old friend, reminded him often that redemption wasn't a single act, but a daily practice. He took that to heart. He showed up for the small things, birthdays he had once forgotten, calls to ask about her day, even moments of silence where all he could offer was his listening ear. Slowly, the walls between them began to thin. One autumn afternoon, she agreed to meet again. This time there was less tension in the air. They walked through a park filled with falling leaves, the kind of setting that reminded him of her childhood, when he used to push her on the swings. They spoke quietly, cautiously, but with more ease than before. She asked him about his life, about why he had changed. For the first time, she seemed to want to understand. He told her the truth, that loneliness had become his greatest teacher, that every missed moment with her was a wound that never healed, and that he had realized too late that success and pride meant nothing without family. She listened, not with forgiveness yet, but with curiosity. That was enough. As weeks turned into months, their meetings grew more frequent. There were still scars, still moments when anger resurfaced, but alongside them came laughter in small doses. One evening, she handed him a photograph. It was of her own child, his grandson, whom he had never met. She said she wanted him to know his grandfather, not the man who once failed her, but the man who was trying now. His hands shook as he held the photo, tears blurring his vision. In that moment, he understood that this was not just her giving him a chance. It was her choosing to believe in the possibility of healing. The bond they rebuilt was not perfect, but it was real. He knew he could never erase the years lost, but he also knew that what mattered now was how he chose to live the days ahead. Redemption had not erased his mistakes, but it had given him the chance to love again, and that was more than he ever thought possible. Redemption is not about rewriting the past, but about stepping into the present with humility and love. Broken bonds may never return to what they once were, but they can grow into something new, something honest, and perhaps even stronger. This father's journey reminds us that no matter how many years have been lost, it is never too late to reach out, to apologize, and to try again. And maybe that's what family is: not perfection, but the willingness to rebuild when everything seems broken. If this story touched you, take a moment to reflect on your own connections. And if it inspired you, please like, share, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories from True Spirit Stories.